Hello world, hola todo el mundo. This is Sexy Flannel Guy, not looking too sexy now, a little bit under the weather. It is December 27, 2023, and it is actually a bright day. I don't know why on this Chromebook, um, it always looks darker in here. And I am not going to invest a lot of time in my life figuring out the lighting for a occasional video, so be it. Um, be that as it may, we've got these beams coming from the window. Light beams. Looks like Scotty's ready to beam me up, which would be absolutely fine. Um, I want to talk about simplicity by design, which I think is important, an important concept. I've never heard it before. I may have invented it, but it refers to intentional simplicity. And so, on the one hand, we want to be as intellectual as possible. We want to develop our minds as much as possible. I'm on break right now from work, and I'm just consuming these, the YouTube videos on uncensored history, for example, by Douglas Murray. And Douglas Murray is a scholar. He is. He published his first book at the age of 18. I think he's 42 now. He's a Brit. He's a prolific writer, a political, social critic. He's a historian as well. And he's interviewing on this series a number of authors that dare to go against the mainstream academia, right? Academia, of course, being very, very flawed in our own day, being institutions that are not in search of the truth, but institutions that seek to indoctrinate its students, as evidenced by the fact that you see our supposed brightest and best and brightest at these leading Ivy League universities, Harvard, Princeton, Cornell, and even the UC system in California, UC Davis, UCLA. You see all across America our supposed best and brightest young people who go to these, the best and brightest universities, marching through campus, shouting to gas the Jews and to from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free, which is a call for genocide. We know it's a call for genocide because it says so in the Arabic language newspapers. I've heard it on interviews. I am a trained Arabic language interpreter from the army. My army days, I was in military intelligence, and we would spend. It was a long process to learn Arabic. We spent a year and a half of our lives at the Defense Language Institute, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, learning Arabic, so that we could do certain things for military intelligence. And you get these well-meaning Americans who say, "Oh, from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free." It's talking about human rights. Human rights. No, it's not. It's not. You go to the primary sources, to the Arabic speakers, to the Arabic speaking world, to those who count on you not knowing Arabic, and you listen to those. There may be even apps that you can, I don't know about apps, but there may be apps that you can actually translate things from directly, perhaps. And you can hear them say it. We're going to kill every last Jew in the land. So we have a situation in the United States wherein our best and brightest institutions, the ivory towers, if you will, have been corrupted right down to their roots. I don't know if there's any coming back from those institutions. So Douglas Murray does the series Uncensored History, and he picks these historians who are brilliant. Some of them I didn't know their names until they were on his interview podcast, because they're just not. They're being suppressed by the New York bestseller list. They don't even enter the best read books list. They're suppressed everywhere. Sometimes the publishers try to stop publication, or the publishing companies sometimes reduce and restrict the amount of books available to the public. And none of these men, in this case, no, it's been one woman in his series, All Men and One Woman, scholar, men and women, in all of these cases, there's nothing particular controversial about what they're saying. They're just challenging the mainstream views of history. So I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but suffice it to say that one must constantly develop one's mind. And if you say, well, why are you doing this? Why am I reading a set of books right now and I'm watching these uncensored history? I will read their books as well. Why am I spending my free time, I have 10 days off, doing all of this and not doing other things? Because the development of one's mind, one's critical thinking skills is paramount. Not just because I like it, and I admit that I do, but because we live in a society where our very survival is dependent upon our ability to reason out of situations and to know when we're being lied to. Huge swaths of our cultural environment are lying to us about a number of different things, and they're using these lies to manipulate us. And it behooves every one of us, it behooves every individual to continue sharpening our intellect so we can perhaps see through these lies and see things for what they are and to look for the truth. The truth being a rather obscure word these days, not used very often anymore, thanks to postmodernism, insert sarcasm. But on the other hand, going back to the chosen simplicity by design, if you will, it's really important to me and people with whom I've made friends over these past 15 years that we get back to basics, that we get back to the land, that we do things simply. So what does it mean to choose simplicity by design? Heck, maybe I'll even write a book about it. Maybe I'll outline it over the next 6 months and publish a book. We'll see if that works. But you want to bring, despite our never-ending quest to develop our minds, our critical thinking skills, one must know what to stop doing. For example, for about 5 years now, people have been telling me, well, send me the link. I don't know how to put a link from the internet into my text messages. I'll show you. Well, I don't want to know. Well, why wouldn't you want to know? Well, I do not want to be sending URLs via text messages to my friends. It's very annoying. My brother does it. A lot of people do it. They said, here, read this, and they put it into my text message. First of all, I'm not going to read it on my phone. The screen on my phone is far too small for me to be sacrificing my eyeballs. I'm not going to read text. I'm not going to read articles on my phone. If you want me to read it, send it via email. It's not that hard to send a URL via email. Even I know how to do that. But I'm not going to continue to learn these new bells and whistles because it doesn't benefit me in any way whatsoever. What benefits me is my chickens, my ducks, although I got rid of my ducks, ended up being a wet mess, those ducks. I will be getting some goats or cattle. I live on 10 acres. As you can see from my other YouTube channel, I just post these things about hobby farming. And I'll be starting my garden in the spring. It's going to be an amazing garden. My endeavor is to eat 100% of my greens and vegetables from the garden, at least seasonally. Now, for full transparency, I don't eat that many vegetables or greens anyway, so it's not really that difficult. But that is one step forward for me into eating a healthier, getting into a healthier food supply. Because our food supply through factory farming is completely compromised. Our food supplies at state level, I'm talking about corporations here, sorry, not the state level, but these corporate food entities have loaded our foods with all manner of poisons. All these chemicals are nothing more than a poisonous stew. Why are Americans starting to die at younger ages? My parents' generation lived longer than my generation is living because they weren't obese like we are. Our foods are loaded with, and sugar is a poison. Eating all that sugar, the 600 to 900 pounds per year of sugar, that Americans, the average American, consumes within his food, that acts like a poison to your body. It creates diabetes and whatnot. Our food supply is completely compromised. And at risk of sounding alarming, at risk of being an alarmist, it would be very easy for another country to decimate us by simply poisoning our food supply. And I know that comes across as, sensationalism. But I'm just saying, though, that these major corporations have compromised our food supplies, and why wouldn't they wipe us out in large part by dumping stuff into our food? Why are the Chinese buying all this farmland in America, including under Governor Whitmer? Unfortunately, currently the governor of Michigan, I did not vote for her. She's allowing the sale of large swaths of Michigan land to the Chinese. Obviously, she's on their payroll, just like the Biden crime family is. But why do the Chinese want this farmland? We're being told, well, because they don't have enough arable land in China. They have lots of land in China. The soil is very poor in China, but we know how to do soil amendments. You can go to any ag college in America, and you'll find young people who get degrees in soil. There's another word for it. You have like animal husbandry, ag businesses. You have ag soil. There's people who get degrees in soil. And they know how to add amendments to soil and to take really poor land and turn it into fertile land. The Chinese know how to do this. I don't believe the answer that the Chinese need to ship, buy 10,000 acres in Michigan and ship something all the way across the continent, across the ocean to feed Chinese cheaply. It doesn't pan out for me. It doesn't add up. The numbers don't add up. So there's something lurking there. I think that we need to get back to gardening and the keeping of livestock, even if it's micro livestock, as much as we possibly can. Get back to learning how to canning our food. That means you are in charge of the processing of your own food, rather than leaving it up to these large corporations. So there's that. And there's other, I used to be, many years ago, I used to be a Marxist. I sort of self-converted in the year 2010. I came over and became a libertarian. And of course, as a libertarian, that's my ideology, political ideology. I vote Republican in all the national elections because that's what libertarians do. The libertarians never put up a viable candidate for president. The last couple of the options were horrible. They weren't even libertarians, really. So what libertarians do is we stay within the large tent Republican political party, and we try to clean up the Republican Party by just getting rid of some of the excess gunk. What's the word? Gunk. That's the word I'm looking for. There's a lot of excess sloppiness in the Republican Party. There's overspending. And libertarians are the ones, I'm thinking about Senator Rand Paul, for example, who is definitely, he'll tell you he's conservative. He is. But he's a conservative for whom libertarianism is his major foundation, his major informant. So he approaches conservatism from a very libertarian foundation. His father, Senator Rand Paul, whatever. I forgot his father's name right now, but many years ago, his father ran for president as a libertarian. And so we need Republicans like Rand Paul to help clean up the Republican Party. And the Republican Party is a big tent political party. But I self-converted in 2010 over to becoming a libertarian, which is a certain kind of conservative now, because libertarians really do not have representation at the national level. Oh yeah, so I was saying that I was a Marxist in the past, and I used to teach Marxism. I used to do pamphlets around California when I was younger. I was really on the political left before the year 2010. From about the age of 19, when I became aware of politics until 2010, I was always on the left, Democrat, further left than Democrats, Marxist, you name it. And then it was through a series of articles and an older man, thrusting articles into my face. Just, you should read this. Just tell me if there's something you agree with. And I was resistant and would lie and say, yeah, I read it, I didn't like it. But eventually I started to sit down and read the articles. I opened my mind and found out that the people on the right side of the aisle figured it out. And I put two and two together, and it became obvious to me that the political left really has no new ideas since the 1960s. They just reframed the ideas, and they were ideologically bankrupt. And that was that big move. It didn't happen in one day in 2010. It took a couple years, but I did make that move and I self-converted. But along with that realization was the idea that, look, the political left puts all of its trust in the government. The political left seems to worship government. When we tell them you worship government, they go, no, I don't worship government. Well, what is it then? How come you want to keep giving the federal government more and more power? How come every one of your representatives for whom you vote seem to be in favor of growing the federal government and the control over our lives? Isn't that worship? What do you call it then if you don't like the word worship? Please tell me. And you never get an answer. The conversation sort of comes to a complete halt at that point, sadly. Because I would really like to engage in an earnest conversation with people on the left. I used to be on the left. I understand them inside and out. I don't think they have an answer for that. I think they have faith in government in the way that people of faith believe in their religions. And I'm a person who was on the left. But anyway, another rabbit hole there. The only thing that I agreed with that Karl Marx said is that you have to have a balance between the mental and the manual. So there you go. An open-minded person should be able to mention some pros and cons about anybody and anything. And the one good thing about Karl Marx is that he said, seek a balance between the mental and the manual. And I've always remembered that because it doesn't matter whether I'm reading all these intellectual books, and in the past I've been on interviews on the internet, and I live in the world of ideas. But I'm also out there with gardens. When I left California a year and a half ago, I had to sell my little farm and my animals. I had goats. Before that, I had goats and chickens, and I had geese at one point. When I was raising my 3 children, we had all manner of farm animals. So people would say, well, why, you have 2 master's degrees, and I eventually got a PhD. Why are you bothering? You can afford to go buy this food at the store, eh? And I would say, yeah, I can afford it. But do I want to eat that food? Now, admittedly, I like to eat. I enjoy the taste of food. I enjoy eating. I'm never going to stop going to a grocery store. And there are indeed things I need from the grocery store that I cannot replicate, like toilet paper. I actually can make shampoo and laundry detergent. YouTube does have do-it-yourself videos on how to do that. I haven't done that yet. I will learn how to do that this summer. That's one of my summer plans, learn how to make laundry detergent. So we'll always need grocery stores, and I'll always eat food that I buy at a grocery store. But in the interest of self-improvement, I want to reduce the amount of food that I eat from grocery stores. And I will reduce that amount of food from my garden and from my animals that I have. Now, if you live you don't have 10 acres like I do, but you have a yard, right? Now, if you live in an apartment, it's difficult. You can have a little garden on your balcony or in your window, but that's not going to supply you with much of anything. If you live in an apartment, you're pretty much trapped. Do whatever you can to get a house with a yard. But if you have a yard, You have a backyard, you have a front yard. There's something called micro livestock. Um, Micro livestock would be guinea pigs that are edible. The people in Peru, the indigenous people of Peru, have been eating these guinea pigs from time immemorial. They put them in stews. Every housewife in Peru, traditional housewife, has a cage of guinea pigs there in the kitchen. She feeds the guinea pig scraps from the table, uneaten foods, and they produce prolifically, and you just butcher them. And there's videos on how to skin them, and you toss them in a crock pot and you make them into stews. There's also rabbits are micro livestock. Most towns, most municipalities, where I live, we don't have municipalities, we have townships. They will allow for 3 hens and no rooster. You could have 3 hens. A lot of places, instead of having a dog, now I'm going to offend all the dog owners on this video here, but dogs are pretty useless, right? Now you're going to say, well, dogs are for protection. And dogs are, you can have them hunt for you when you shoot you go duck hunting. And dogs can pull carts, and dogs can kill robbers and all this. But if you're living in a municipality or township, the chance that your dog actually has a job is probably 0, right? If you have a working dog, that's a different story. Most people have a dog because they see the dog as a companion. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not against having a dog as a companion. I have some friends down the road. They have a dog named Duke, and Duke's a senior citizen dog. He's in his 90s in human years, and he's a nice dog, okay? But instead of a dog, you can have a couple Nigerian dwarf does, right? And they're going to eat your grass. You can grow stuff in the garden for them. They will produce a pint of milk per day because they're small goats. These Nigerian dwarf goats are very beautiful. They have blue eyes. They're often tricolored. And they're the size of a medium-sized dog. They're about the size of a Labrador Retriever. And as long as you have 2, they don't make noise. Goats are herd animals. If you get a single goat, the goat's going to make noise all the time, drive you crazy, because herd animals have to be among their own kind. That's why you always get 2, and you milk them, and you can eat them too. So you'll have to breed them every year to keep the milk flowing, and then you eat the babies. You can butcher them. So there is a thing called micro livestock. And of course, if you don't like the idea of having micro livestock, just go hot and heavy for the vegetables and get yourself a greenhouse. I've got plenty of land for gardens, but I am going to also have a greenhouse built so that I can extend the growing season for my vegetables and so forth. So now I've said a lot. It's 23 minutes, but I'm really going for simplicity by design, because when we put the corporate farms in place in charge of our food, and as we saw after the pandemic, we saw that the ships were kept out in the middle of the ocean. The supply chain was broken. We've already seen what happens to the supply chain. Now, it's impossible to avoid the supply chain issues. Like for example, buy my chicken feed. Well, I'm going to get them from some sort of supply chain, right? I'm not going to grow my own grain. So I'm dependent on the supply chain as well. But the idea is to reduce your dependency upon these supply chains. I could actually reduce the number of chickens I have and just feed them from stuff here on the 10 acres. I don't need the grains, okay? So where to go with this? We need to make our lives the one good thing that Karl Marx said: balance the mental and the manual. Develop your mind constantly, because now we've got artificial intelligence. It's a pivotal issue. It's an existential issue of our time, that you're going to have to use your mind to wade through the junk that comes at us all the time via the internet. You have to keep developing your mind. You have to become more sophisticated in your thinking. On the other hand, however, go simple. Go for the gardens and the food. Reduce your dependency upon corporate food and factory farms. Okay? And that also provides you with exercise. So, those are my pearls of wisdom for today. And look, I'm ready for Scotty to beam me up with these beams over here. We'll talk to you soon. Ciao from the magnificent North.